In this video, I'm going to be ranking every single underwater creature in Ark. This is going to be including Ark Survival Evolved and Ascended, so both of these. And of course, there's been a lot of Ark Editions creatures that have been added to the underwater as well, so of course those are going to be on the list as well. Also, this is from a PvE perspective, so I'm kind of looking at this for more PvE use, but anyway, let's get into it. At first is the eel, which is easily going to be an F tier. This thing just absolutely sucks. It's a passive tame. I don't know why, because it's like insanely aggressive, and you gotta passive tame it. There's ways to do it with like the Basilosaurus, I think, is a method you can use to easily tame these things, but you can't ride them or anything. They kind of just like sit around and do nothing. I mean, I don't know. You kind of need a bunch of them to get that like electric effect going, and they're not that great, honestly. Next up is the Plesiosaurus, which I'm going to put in the B tier. I actually really like this thing compared to most people, because most people just absolutely hate it. It's really close to A, but I feel like there are some better underwater creatures that kind of knock it down to B, which we'll get into later. But this thing, I think it's pretty solid. It's not insanely hard to tame, it's just a knockout tame, and it actually goes really fast, so you can use it to get around the underwater portions of the map pretty quickly. It's also pretty strong. It's not like super good at taking out stuff. Like, I wouldn't recommend it for like alphas and stuff, but you could use it to take out alphas, so I don't really know. It's kind of hard to hit with the really long neck. It also has a platform saddle. Never really used that though, and you know, it's just overall, I think it's just pretty good, but there are better options. And after that, we have the Ichthyosaurus, which I'm going to put in the B tier as well. This one's a great starter underwater creature. It's just a passive tame, and once you get it, I mean, you can't really kill things with it. You're going to get destroyed if you try fighting anything, but it is pretty quick. You can outswim a lot of underwater creatures like Megalodons and stuff like that. So if you just stick near the surface of the water, then you should be able to get around pretty easily, and you can pretty much use this to go tame or help you in taming other underwater creatures. So it's good for the early game. Once you get past the early game, it's kind of useless, so that's why it's capped at B. But next up is going to be the Mosasaurus, which I'm going to put at A tier. I wish I could put this thing in S tier, because the Mosasaurus is just a really cool creature, but it's honestly not that useful in Ark. Or, I mean, it is useful, but not like S tier worthy. It's basically only has that one bite attack, and it's really strong, and it's got a lot of health. But the only problem with it is it doesn't have resistance to like the jellyfish stings and all of that, which I do find kind of a deal breaker, because most of the caves are just filled with jellyfish and eels, and you're just going to get wrecked if you're being stunned by those, and of course the jellyfish can dismount you. This thing does have a tech saddle though, which is kind of nice to have, so you can deal some damage with the laser blasts. It also has a platform saddle that I don't know if I'd ever use, but it's kind of good. I'd say it's good for like killing alpha creatures underwater, not good for caves though, and of course you're going to get stunned at some point with it, which is why I can't put it in an S tier. After that is the Piranha, which is going to go in the D tier. You can tame this thing with fish baskets, and there's not really much reason to at all. I mean, it is easy to tame with the fish baskets, but I mean, it attacks stuff, I guess, so you can use it for that, but other than that, it's not that useful at all. Next up is the Megalodon, which I'm going to be putting at the A tier. I do wish this thing was bigger, because, you know, the Megalodon is kind of derpy in this game and is not really that intimidating, but it actually does have some good abilities. First off, it has a bleed attack, so you can actually use that on alphas to bleed them out and kill them. I've used that multiple times. It also gets a pack buff as well, so if you have a pack of these things, you can actually go into caves and take them out. Of course, you're going to get stunned, but, you know, at the same time, it's still good. If you have a pack of them, you can take out stuff, and you can take out alphas too with a pack of them. Like, overall, if you have a pack of these things, they're great. But even alone, like I said, that bleed helps a lot, and it's decently fast. It's just overall a pretty great underwater creature, and it's not hard to tame at all. It's like one of the easiest underwater tames. After that is the Basilosaurus, which I'm going to be putting at the S tier. I think this is the best underwater creature, in all honesty. First off, it has resistance to jellyfish stings and all that, so you're not going to get dismounted, you're not going to get stung by eels, which is just fantastic. It's also pretty strong, but it also has a ton of health. It's super tanky, and if you go to the surface, you're going to heal insanely fast too. That's also a buff it has, which makes it quite useful. So if you're like fighting something and you get low health, you can just go up to the surface and you'll heal a lot faster by doing that. Overall, it's just a really solid underwater creature, and you can use it. I just use one Basilosaurus, and you really can clear out a cave with it, and most of the underwater caves anyway. You might want to bring some more, but at the same time, it's really great. You can use it for pretty much anything you need to underwater. Next up is the Shastasaurus, which I'm going to be putting in the B tier. This one is a very late game tame, considering you need a tech saddle for it, but you can't get this saddle out of supply drops, but you still do need element for it. And it's basically like an underwater submarine once you get that saddle, which is a really cool idea, but it's, like I said, it is a really late game, which kind of defeats a lot of the purpose. I feel like it'd be better to have this thing in the earlier game. But, I mean, once again, when you're in the late game, it is really fun to have it. Even though there's not really too many uses I think this thing is good for, in PvE anyway. It does have like a bunch of abilities that I feel like are more PvP oriented, like the sonic bursts and all that stuff. But it's pretty good. I think B tier is a good spot for it. Next is the Tusa, which is also going to be in the S tier. Probably the second best underwater creature in the game. This one is pretty great as well. You also cannot be stunned on the Tusa, but it's got a ton of health and a ton of damage as well. It does a ton. I think it's the most damage for an underwater creature in the game. It is pretty big too. The thing is, it is a little bit harder to tame than a Basilosaurus, because the Basilosaurus was just a passive tame. This one, it is a passive tame, but you need black pearls and you gotta like sacrifice one of your creatures. I don't think it's like insanely difficult, but it is not easy either. Overall, I think the Tusa is just a really great underwater creature. It's everything, like kind of like how the Mosa should be with the resistance to jellyfish stings. It's just super powerful. After that is the Dunkleosteus, which is going to be in the A tier. This one is pretty great. I mean, it's really slow and doesn't really deal much damage or have much health, but it's not for fighting. It is for resource harvesting, as it can gather stone and crystal and pretty much any mineral underneath the water, so you can harvest a lot of metal with this thing. It's also got weight reductions, I think, which is going to help you a bunch. So especially on maps like the center where there's tons of metal and all that, underwater you can get tons of resources with the Dunkleosteus, and it's a great option for resource harvesting. After that, we have the anglerfish, which is also going to be in the A tier for similar reasons for the Dunkleosteus. It doesn't harvest metal though, it harvests silica pearls, but it's pretty much the best way to harvest silica pearls in the game. And I think like one of the only ways to harvest silica pearls, other than with your hands, which isn't very efficient. But this thing is super efficient at getting them, and you can get tons of silica pearls, which is a super useful resource. Pretty much the main reason it's up here. It can't really defend itself that well or anything. It's just mainly for the silica pearl gathering, but it's great for doing so. Next up is the Diplodocus, which I'm going to be putting in the B tier. It's a very early game tame, and it's great in the early game. It is kind of like in the swamp area you can find it, but of course you can't ride it on land, you can only use it underwater. But it has the ability to give you oxygen if you go up to it, so if you don't have scuba tanks, you can use this thing to get some oxygen. As well as it's just insanely fast, so you can outrun things, which is great because this thing sucks at attacking, deals like no damage at all, and it's like super not tanky. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have much health at all, so you're gonna get pretty much insta-killed if you get attacked by anything, but it is super fast, so you can outrun most underwater stuff in the game, making it just great for traveling around in the early game, and of course having that oxygen supply. After that, we have the Manta, which I'm going to be putting in the C tier. This one is not really that great. You need angler gel in order to tame it and passive tame it. You might be able to passive tame it with meat, but it might not be nearly as efficient. Angler gel is definitely the way to go. But, I mean, it's not really that strong. It is kind of quick, and you can jump out of the water, which is nice, but you have to be careful, because if you touch land, you're going to instantly die. Like, there's just no wait at all. You just insta-die. So be careful about that. But you can jump out of the water, which is really fun. But like I said, it's only really great for travel, because you can't really defend yourself with it. It doesn't deal much damage, and also doesn't have much health either. And it's not, like, super easy to tame. Like, it's way easier to get an Ichthyosaurus, which I think does everything this thing can do, but better. After that is the Coelacanth, which is going to be in the D tier. Same reasons the Piranha's in here, except it's kind of worse than the Piranha because it can't even attack stuff. It's just kind of there, but you know, I guess it's kind of fun to have as a pet, so it's going to keep it out of F tier, I guess. That's not like, I don't know, you just have a fish. I guess you can feed it to things. And then the Sabertooth Salmon, also for all the exact same reasons. It's just a fish you can tame that doesn't really do anything. Next up is the Megachilon, which is going to be in the C tier. The only one that's not in Arc Ascended yet, because of course it comes out with Genesis, which Genesis is coming out in like April of next year, so we got quite a while. But this one it's good. It is one of the hardest creatures to tame in the game, and for that, it doesn't really have any like special uses that I would go out of my way to try to tame it for. You can build stuff on its back, and you can breathe underwater on the back of it, which is really cool, but I feel like it's more of a gimmick, honestly. Like, there's not really like a reason that I would need to have those abilities on the Megachilon. So I mean, it does automatically produce rare mushrooms and rare flowers for you, but I feel like if you're that in the late into the game where you can actually tame one of these things, you'll probably have plenty, so I don't know. Next up is one of the newer creatures, the Aralon, added from the Arc Editions mod, and this one is at an A tier. This one is great. It's not super hard to tame. It's basically just a passive tame, and all you need is some biotoxin. Once you get it and you make the saddle actually has oxygen tanks on it, so you can breathe infinitely, and if you're just near it as well, you also get oxygen from it, so it's great for exploring and not having to worry about your scuba tank, you know, like depleting, because you'll have this thing the entire time. It also creates algae, which you can use for taming. I believe it's herbivore. Yeah, herbivores, you can use the algae to tame, and it's like the best thing to tame herbivores with. So if you're going out to tame stuff, you basically need an Aralon, and you can also use the algae to make the little sushi things, which basically increases the taming effectiveness of something you're taming. If it lost any, if it got hit by something, you can use the sushi, which the only way to get it is through the Aralon. So for those two reasons, this thing is basically a necessity. It could even be argued to be S tier, honestly, just for those, but as an underwater creature itself, I think it is A tier. It also has a buff towards killing jellyfish. It does more damage to them, and it's resistant to the jellyfish stings, I'm pretty sure. And you can harvest a ton of biotoxin with this thing, which is, of course, is super useful as well, because you can make like the shocking tranquilizer darts with that, and biotoxin is just a better version of narcotics in this game. After that is the Leoplorodon, which is going to be in the D tier. I wish I could put this thing higher, because Leoplorodons are really cool, but even when you tame this thing, it only lasts for 30 minutes. Also, it's like one of the rarest creatures in the game, and you need honey to tame it, so it's kind of annoying to tame, and it's not that strong or anything. The only really use it has is it gives buffs to drops that it's nearby, and it gives you like a 6-hour buff that will increase the loot of drops, even though I've heard a lot of people say that it doesn't really even help that much, even though it could be argued, because I've also heard some people say that they get really good loot from using it, so I don't know. It's kind of like a 50-50, I guess, between what people say, but honestly, I don't think it's that great. And the buff, it's kind of annoying that the creature, like the only thing good about it is a buff that you get from it. Like the creature itself doesn't even really matter. So I don't know, I just don't really like it that much, and I wish it would have not limited to 30 minutes. And lastly, we have the Zafactinus, which is going to be in the B tier. Of course, added from the Arc Editions. It's a pretty simple knockout tame, and like I said, it's just great, I think, more early to mid-game, because it's decently strong. It's got like that bleed attack where you can one-bite things. If they're small enough, you can like just eat them in one chomp, which is kind of cool. You can also jump out of the water, which is fun, and it can flaps on the land, which is not really used for that, but I mean, it's kind of funny to watch. So overall, it's just a pretty solid creature, and more good for the mid to early game. But that is my list of the Arc underwater creatures. I did make this video like 2 years ago, but I don't think anyone watched it back then. And of course, I've been waiting for the Arc Editions underwater creatures to be added to the game as well. But that's going to be it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe. Thanks for watching, and bye.